Hello and welcome to this video. So in today's video I'm going to talk about the money supply. But before we get started, let's quickly have a look at the objectives. By the end of this video, you'll be familiar with a few definitions or terms that we use when we talk about money supply and how the Central Bank of Canada increases or decreases the money supply. We're also going to look at the money multiplier, and finally we're going to look at a few examples. So let's get started. For the definitions, money multiplier is the first one, and that is a ratio that tells us how much money supply increases when the monetary base increases by one. And what is the monetary base? That is the total amount of currency circulating in the public, and that also includes reserves. So basically, all coins, paper notes, banks reserve, and yeah. And reserve, that's the money the bank holds in their vault plus the deposit of the central bank. And at the bottom, I do have a few variables that represent some of the terms that we've just talked about. And I'm going to use this one throughout, and I'll probably bring them up again when we need to. So there are three things that affect the money supply, and the first one is the central bank. The central bank has the most control over the money supply, and it controls the money supply because it controls monetary base by buying and selling financial security in the financial market, and this process is done through the open market operation. The second thing that has an effect on the money supply is banks, like commercial banks, that like TD Bank, yeah. So these commercial banks, they control the checking account, which are the largest component of money supply, and they also control loans, and through that they have an effect on the money supply, because if I deposit some money in the bank and somebody else borrows money from the bank, through that process we're creating money, and the bank basically is affecting the money supply. And finally, the non-bank public also have an influence on the money supply, and the non-bank public basically includes you and I. So if I deposit money in the bank and you go borrow money from the bank to start your business, you basically indirectly have an effect on the money supply. So the money supply can increase for two reasons, and that is increase in money multiplier and increase in the monetary base. And the formula for growth of money is growth in money supply is equal to money multiplier times the growth in monetary base. So how does the central bank increase money supply? When a central bank buys bonds, it increases money supply. That's because, for example, if the central bank buys $2,500 bond from TD Bank, this causes the reserve to go up by 2,500, and this is also going to cause the monetary base to go up by 2,500. And now, because TD Bank has more reserves, it is able to loan out more money, because when the reserves go up, the banks are able to loan out more, and that is going to increase the money supply. And the opposite is also true for decreasing the money supply. So the central bank sells the bonds, and this is going to decrease the money supply. So for example, if the central bank sells a bond to TD Bank, let's say worth 2,500, then now TD Bank has $2,500 less. So it is able, and because the reserves are less, the bank has less money to loan, and this is going to decrease the money supply. Also, just a note, bond cannot be lent to others because it's not liquid. And money multiplier, so the formula is currency divided by checkable deposits plus 1. C is currency and D is checkable deposits, and this is reserves divided by checkable deposits, but a simplified version is 1 divided by reserve ratio. And there's two things that increase the money multiplier, and that is holding more money in checking accounts instead of currency. And if commercial banks loan out most of their money, in most of their reserves, so instead of like holding, so if like if the reserve ratio, or if the bank holds like used to hold 50% of the deposit, but now decides to hold only like maybe 10% and loan out 90%, then it's going to increase the money multiplier. And also the opposite is true for decreasing. So holding money as currency instead of depositing at the bank is going to decrease the money multiplier. And also if the bank loans out less of their reserves, it's going to decrease the money multiplier as well. The deposit multiplier is 1 over reserve ratio, and the formula for increase in money supply is equal to increase in deposits times deposit multiplier. I have a few examples, but I'm going to go over them really quickly because we've talked about most of this stuff in the slides, but please feel free to pause the video if you like. So the first one, if the government of Canada buys a 20 million of government bonds from TD Bank, assuming there's no change in the quantity of currency, how does this affect the reserve? It's going to increase by 20 million. Second example, what actions by household and firm will cause the money multiplier to decrease? And that is holding more money as currency instead of depositing at the bank. And finally, suppose you deposit $200 in your checking account at TD Bank. If TD's reserve ratio is 40%, as a result, the amount of the checking account deposit in the banking system will rise by 500. And yeah, thanks for watching.